Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune into what matters. This is the place where well-being, wisdom, and leadership meet in order for us to reimagine and redesign the way we in the world work. I am Christina Arylo, your host, and I am especially both excited and also nervous, honestly, today as we make our way here. We stand here at the 9th year anniversary of this podcast that we call Feminine Power Time, or Feminine Power Time, which is delivered as a podcast, but as I often say, is so much more than that. It is a field, a community, a place where those of us that are here to be in what I like to call Team Elevate or Team Reimagine and Redesign, a place for all of us to step outside of what I like to call the banana world in order to remember who we are, align to our design, stay centered and calm and clear in the now while we navigate and co-create the next. And I was reflecting on the last 8 seasons. I really saw those themes coming through all of the podcasts that have been done over these last 8 years. And I've been asking myself for the last several weeks, several months actually, and I've been in some pretty deep conversations with members of my Wisdom Council on, what is next for this podcast? What is next for me? What is next for all of us? And it's something that I love about cyclical living is whenever we're completing a cycle and starting the next, which birthdays are a great example, it gives us a time to take a pause. And so what we're going to do today, and maybe you're hearing a little bit of the nervousness within me because there are some things I'm going to share with you that are not fully baked. There are things that I'm going to share with you today about my own journey and where I am that some of you may know and some of you may have not known before. And that's going to affect how and what we do here within Feminine Power Time and all of the things that I've created over the last 15 plus years. And share with you some of the principles of how do we make change? Like when you know a change is coming through you, when you know your calling, your vocation is beginning to shift, when you know that you're in a life stage that is coming to a completion and another cycle is beginning, what I often talk about here as a threshold crossing, which was a word given to me through John O'Donohue, one of my favorite mystics on the planet. Well, he's actually not physically on the planet, but his presence, as most mystics, is still very much here. And we're always tapping into that inquiry, but there's something very deeply that I've been feeling within my own life, and is really around this question of what is evolving. What is evolving within me? What is evolving within you? And what is evolving around us as well? And looking at where those two things meet, looking at where your own internal design, where my own internal design meets what's happening in the bigger design of where we're at as a planet, as a people, as a this grand experiment called the universe. And where are we at in the evolution of the way that we work, that we live, that we relate to each other? There's a lot of evolution going on. It's actually always going on. And I do believe that in order to elevate, we do need to evolve. But evolution's hard to see, right? If you think about most things that evolve, it's only after the fact that you look back and be like, wow, I could totally see that path of evolution that has brought me to a new place where I'm operating and living at an elevated level of consciousness or experience or whatever it might be, or even as a society, how we've evolved, or companies evolve, or our culture evolves, or in some cases, devolves. That happens too. And things, go extinct, or things can go sideways. And what we practice here in personal leadership, and what I want to invite us all into today, and I'm going to share as honestly as I can today, is this question about what actually is evolving through you and within you, so that we can really feel that and name that, because there are like these time capsules that are going off within our own design that says, okay, when you turn this age at this time on the planet, this is going to open for you, or this is going to close for you. And it's going to call you forward to what's next, to evolve. And evolution is tricky. It's really tricky. And it's one of the things I love so much about the feminine and so much about the power of co-creation as a real thing. I'm going to share with you today some of the practices that I use as I'm evolving. I look back to my 30-year-old self, who was, honestly drank Diet Pepsi, smoked Newport Lights, and drove an emerald green Camaro, and was getting her MBA and working her way up the corporate ladder. And I love her. I love her so much. She also loved Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam, and the essence of her is still very much in me. I do actually desire to have another emerald green car, and this time I think it probably will be a Jeep. But I don't drink Diet Pepsi, and I don't smoke cigarettes. And I made an evolutionary leap decades ago, where I said I would only use my life force and my intelligence and my wisdom to do things that actually improved the lives of people and the planet. And so I would never work or support a product that I didn't believe in or that was actually harming. So that was the end of my my soda pop days, the end of my marketing things or supporting the marketing and things that actually harmed much more than they helped and supported. And that was an evolutionary leap for me at the time, but it's guided me so well. And so there are evolutionary leaps happening within inside of you. And whenever we come to these evolutionary leaps, there's always, like they talk about in the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, there's the call. And where you're being called, whether it's like your body calling you into the next evolution, or it's your financial reality, or it's your vocation or career, or it's in a relationship, or it's in where you're living. I want you to bring it. Bring those callings that are stirring you to evolve, to elevate. Bring the parts that are really excited about it, and bring the parts that are like shaking perhaps in your boots, like this fear that doesn't want to let go because we're not sure what's on the other side, or it hits one of the primal fears of how will I create money? How will I be supported? How will I? And that is the resistance speaking, and it's going to show up. It's in me right now, which is why my heart is a little fluttery, because I'm going to share some things as along the way about what's evolving for me. And then what I'll do is I'll share the principles that I'm using, and then you can take them into your life. How does that sound? And then I'm going to end us today where I know Feminine Power Time, the podcast, is going next, which is going to be, we're not going to be moving into season 9. So I'll just give you the spoiler alert. We are not moving into season 9 yet. We are going to be doing what we're calling season 8.5. Season 8.5. It's kind of like Harry Potter. He have platform 9.5. And one of the things that is true here at Feminine Power Time is we work with both the feminine and the masculine power, the invisible and the visible, the head and the heart, the mystical and the material. And it's one of the reasons why I created this podcast and why I created the Wisdom School and why I've taught feminine leadership for so long and downloaded the models that I have, because it's so valid. It's so valid. The mystical is as real as the material, but it's been poo-pooed and shoo-shooed for so long. And we have become such a culture who thinks that, we have all this power. I'm going to manifest this. I'm going to manifest that. I can make that happen. And yeah, a lot of us have manifested realities ourselves right into a reality that feels more like a jail than it does for what our actual design is here to do. And that's why we practice co-creation here instead of just plain old manifestation. Power in manifestation. But if we elevate, it's really the power of co-creation. And so today I invite you and I invite me to be here together in this conversation, and for us to take a look also around at what's evolving in your world. And I mean that by your world. It could be the industry that you work in. It could be the place that you live. It could be the way your family system is set up. And just noticing that there's evolution happening there too. And what I want to be able to support us in this series 8.5 that's going to come up, and I'll share more about it at the end. It's called the Season of Light. And I think you're really going to love it. And then we'll decide after that Season of Light, which I'll talk more about where we'll go and what will happen with this podcast going forward. We're in the mystery around that. And one of the ways that we work in co-creation is, this is what I know, and this is what's still in the mystery. So what I know is we're going to do a Season of Light for 3 months. And it's going to be amazing, and it's going to hold all of us as we go through this intense time. That season might be a summer for you. It might be the winter if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, or it might be a different season wherever it is that you are in the world. But 3 months is a really great time. 3 is the number that I associate with elevation. It makes a triangle, and the symbol of elevation is a circle with a triangle inside of it. And so 3 gives us space by its nature. In 2, there's only a line, no space, just back and forth and back and forth. So to elevate into a different possibility, we need that 3, that triangle, that third piece. Sometimes in the feminine leadership world, we call it the sacred third. So that's what we're going to do. I'll tell you more about it. So you can rest knowing that we have 3 months of the Season of Light really dedicated to supporting you and your radiance and your well-being as you navigate the now into the next, so that you really stay attuned to your design and where you're going. And I'm going to be walking right along with you. And then we'll see what comes out the other side for all of us. So as we dive into this today or open this up, I invite you just to stop and pause and consider the next 3 months. And just even imagine, close your eyes for a moment. And imagine that the symbol that we use for what I call healthy time pressure, their time spans. This is for those of you who have overwhelmed and over it, is in the section on creating space and time, section 4. For those of you who don't know, you can just close your eyes and imagine a rainbow. And you are at the start of this rainbow. It's called the time span. So just mark whatever the date is right now, or what the closest, nearest half month or month is, or first new moon, and then send that time span, that rainbow, out 3 months or 3 moon cycles from now. We're going to be doing this one live here in June, July, and August. So it'll take us all the way through the end of August, which will be the natural shifting towards the equinox time. And just take a breath as you allow yourself to just root in and relax into where you are right now, in this moment in time. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode, that right now it's really important to stay present, to be here now, and to create a time span that's long enough to give you space to play, to contemplate, to see, to be informed. And also not too much space that it feels that the mystery is so scary because it's like a big black hole over there and you have no idea how you're going to get from where you are to where you're going. This is one of the superpowers of cyclical living and co-creation, time spans. And just feeling yourself relax into that, those 3-month cycles. And as I give you these inquiries, I do invite you, if you have a piece of paper handy, jot it down. If not, we'll do our best to put them into the show notes as well. And what will be happening with the Season of Light is that every week there will be an episode, and it'll be 9 episodes in total, plus 2 mini power pauses. And there'll be an inquiry that will give to you to really chew on and contemplate. And we're starting today with this inquiry is, what is evolving within me and around me? So what's evolving within you and what's evolving around you? And one thing I'll just say as we go into this conversation, there's a very important principle in how the universe works naturally, that it's always working itself towards more harmony. And harmony has lots of different rhythms, but together it's playing. It's not a cacophony, it's a harmony. And that doesn't mean that there's not chaos, that there doesn't mean that there's not destruction, because there is. In order to evolve, there is destruction. There is things that will die, that need to die. There are things, and we'll talk about that today. It's like how can you be with that, and how do we know what to preserve? But that there is that piece that can create chaos, and it creates wobbles in the field when we're deconstructing or releasing other things and kind of creating the new form, and in the middle trying to stabilize it all. And what do we preserve? It will create wobbles in your field. It will create wobbles in the field, and it's that. But knowing that we're always working towards elevating and evolving into more harmony, that is one place I just come back to. And the symbol, if you're into sacred geometry, which is, I think, again, the word sacred means wholeness. So when you look at certain images, they give you wisdom on what actual wholeness would look like. How do things get ordered? The flower of life, if you don't know what that is, give it a Google. And what's so awesome about sacred geometry is it works on the material mental plane in the world of mathematics, and it also works on the mystical plane and how things are organized and designed. And we always say where science and the head and the mystical and the heart and soul live, that is where the magic lives. So check it out if you're not sure what I'm talking about. I have one sitting here on my desk. Okay, so that's the inquiry. What's evolving within me and around me? And then our conversation today is really about how do we allow the process to unfold, attune to what's right for us, and accept where we are, while also expanding into what's possible. Because that's kind of where we all are, right? So as we evolve to elevate the self, the I, the me, the we, and the world. Okay, so I'm going to do a little stretch. I'm going to go first, you all. I'm going to go first. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to do my best. We'll see how it kind of comes out. Okay, so what is evolving for me? And I want to share this with you because I received I was tuning in on May 1st, which is one of the 8 superpower turns of the year. And it's a time where we make the inquiry about what do we want to give love to? What do we want to nourish over the summer or the winter, depending on where we are? And one of the things that came through as I was attuning and doing a meditation practice, kind of tuning into what I like to call my divine downline, I got a really strong sense in my heart, and I'm auditory, so my intuition, I hear things, I hear words kind of drop in, and everyone's intuition is different, but this is also it's really important for you to know at this time how yours works, so that you can it's sensing into things is one of the ways that we move through and having that heightened sensitivity. So what came to me in that meditation was I was asking about loving my community, the people that I'm connected to, which you are all that. Even if we've never met before in person, we're here together for however long you've been tuned in, and I feel like we are fellow travelers on this Team Elevate, Team Reimagine, and Team Redesign. And then what the words I heard is let them in. Let them in, let them in. And I'm a pretty open book, and I think you guys would have to tell me, you'd all have to tell me, but I also, in my Enneagram type is a type 8, and the 8s are known for having the sense of strong self-assuredness that people see on the outside, but on the inside is a gooey marshmallow heart. So I have a gooey marshmallow heart, total gooey marshmallow heart, and so I'm going to just open up a little bit of the gooey marshmallow heart here. So what's evolving for me is what I'm calling my vocation and my location. I'm not going to talk a lot about location because most of you know that I moved, or I was moved, the universe moved me to Asheville, North Carolina, And so there's just pieces around location and how I'm going to be living and all of that. So that's happening, but I'm not going to dive in there today. I want to talk about vocation, actually, and vocation is your calling. So in 2007, when I got the call to go out into the world and teach women and girls self-love and to make self-love as normal as table salt and understandable as table salt, and I resisted and I said to the universe, can't I go teach leadership or well-being? Because that pays a lot more money and it's actually what I want to do. And the universe said back to me, well, you can, but we'll give the job to somebody else. And I had an experience where I had went out to do it was for a bunch of women leaders for alumni of two of the business schools in San Francisco, or the alumni from those alumni. And I remember leaving that event and just being so clear that like what I had to talk about and share about regarding the feminine and how it shows up in business and how the values of the feminine can really support us. And I was only teaching them, going through a year-end power pause. And I was just like, wow, it's not, the world out there isn't ready in the business world for what it is that I have to share. And that had come on the heels of a full year of asking this question about, why is it that we just continue to, like, from a business perspective, it's like you have to make more money, more top line, more bottom line, more profit year after year after year. And why isn't it okay just to grow deeper and wider and maintain the shape that a company is in if it's healthy? And why are people like, why is the system around growth so crazy? And I spent like a year or two diving into that and asking a lot of questions to different people, and even people who were thought leaders in the business world and in the organizational world. They just kind of looked at me like I had 10 heads. This has happened to me many times. Maybe some of you have had this happen, right? Where you're saying things and it's so clear today, you can see it. And even the people who are, leaders in your field look at you like you have 10 heads. So that, it was almost like that didn't go away. It just faded kind of into the back burner. My friend Shasta and I like to talk about it sometimes like a stove. And we have 8 burners, she and I, because we like to have lots of things. But we have the front burners and we have the back burners. Maybe we'll talk about 4. We'll do four burners. So I went to the back burner. And then it went to the front because what happened is the flow just took me in 2010 when I did my first online course with my former business partner, Amy Ehlers, that was all around the inner critic and the inner wisdom, specifically how it shows up inside of women and girls. And that just took off. And it just was like a raft that took us. And I didn't mean to get into the personal transformation, maybe world in that way, in the online world, but I just surfed that with Amy for 5 years. And that allowed me to really birth that whole body of work on self-love that is contained in all of my books, but particularly the first 3 books. And then I found myself in 2016 and 2017 realizing that I needed to expand. Like I needed more of as an entrepreneur, I needed to have more money coming in than going out. So I did, and I played with some of the models that you use for business expansion. And while they about killed me, my endocrine system went like crazy, and it was no matter how much money I made, and I kept making more money on the top line, I didn't keep any more money. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why am I going to keep paying more money to everybody else and working so hard in a way that's taxing my endocrine system? I need to change my business model. And so in 2018, I started putting into practice a dream that started in 2016, which is when Noah asked me very specifically, it's like, Christine, if you could do anything, if you could like design your career, design your work, design your life, what would you do? And I said, I would found a consultancy where I worked with a handful or two handfuls, 3 handfuls of really amazing clients who individually that had positions of authority and power and influence within organizations that could help us reimagine and redesign this world. I would work with them individually as their leadership advisor. I would work with their teams and working with the Enneagram. and cyclical planning. And then I would keep the wisdom school going, and I would continue to work with amazing people such as yourselves who are changing the world, team reimagine and redesign, and have retreats or councils or whatever. And that's what I would do. And, probably write some books and just simplify. And that dream is now bearing fruit. The world is at a place where I am meeting it. So the world has evolved and I have evolved. Honestly, I think my personality as an 8 can get a little feisty and have a tone of intensity to it that I worked very deeply with the feminine and also deeply with my marshmallowy heart to bring into more maturity over the last several years, where I don't need to rage, I don't need to fight, I don't need to make somebody else wrong. I'm going to be over here on team reimagine and redesign and work with the receptive ones. So a lot of my internal work was about releasing the struggle and releasing having to fight. And so why I'm sharing all of this with you all is to share that, this is how, if you look at your own life, you'll see the evolution of all of these things that have occurred for you and pausing where we are right now. And the thing is about evolution is that we don't lose our essence. Your essence is always intact. This is true for every wisdom tradition I've ever encountered. I really love the Buddhist teaching of the diamond heart, which is inside of our pure hearts is a diamond, this diamond heart that, like a diamond, it can't be broken, it can't be deeply gouged, like it always maintains its pure essence. And I also believe that when it comes to our vocation. So our vocation in the world, which is very much tied to our pure heart, it's our vocation comes from doing what we love, because that energy of love, when we serve from love, it actually and it's not just love of others, it's self-love, love of others, love. That is where the passion and the power comes from. So at the center of your diamond heart is this love. But also at the center of your vocation are the things that are your calling. And vocation isn't just what we do, right, for our job and where we get paid money. It might be. And if you're really in alignment, that is possible for all of us. But the act of going through what we go through is also part of the essence. And that's where we say, like, vocation is also about mothering and mentoring and parenting and your creative expression and expanding that. So when I look, back at this and just even taking a pause here for yourself as we're exploring this, looking at what's evolving within you right now. And so what's evolving within me right now is this, it is time to do my leader to leader work. I call it L to L instead of business to business. I'm I don't want to be a business working with a business. I want to be a human leader working with other human leaders. And remember that leader, that's what we do here, is personal leadership. But leaders are people, some have positions of power, authority, and influence. And as leaders, we all have the ability through our voices and choices to actually make and create a different world. That is what I know that I am here for. And to do that with the established and emerging leaders. So this is, you've heard me talk about working with the generations to come, those who are 8 will be 28 in 20 years. So I'm really looking at this through a 20-year lens. But the essence is the same for me. And think about what's been the essences that have come with you and evolved with you through your vocation, through your calling, through your work in the world, through your presence, through what you've given your energy to. I mean, for me, it will continue to bring feminine wisdom and the deeper wisdom, the ancient wisdom, into the world of business, because I believe that if that world doesn't shift and elevate, it's so locked into everything on this planet that the grid is just too. It needs to disintegrate while the other thing is being created, and so that it could be as graceful as possible. There's different ways that change happens. Things get blown up into smithereens, and we've all had that happen individually. Seen it happen to companies and cities and all those things, and or we can consciously evolve. So I know that that's my part, and I'm not necessarily advertising that when I'm going to work with a person one-on-one, or I'm working with teams, but it is where it is the energy is there. So that doesn't stop, because that's always been at the essence. And I really believe self-love, one of the biggest reasons we have people in positions of power and authority, and we hear so much about narcissism and other types of things, is that's a lack of self-love. And if we had leaders who, as they grew up being little people and were raised by other people who had a deep sense of self-love, that we would be living in a different world. And so I am all about bringing that. That's not going away. I'm just not leading with it. And the other part of what's always been at the essence for me is being able to create a reality in which I'm not sacrificing my soul or my material world stability. And I am still working on that. Honestly, that is something that is part of my work in the world, is to prosper, to be proof of what it looks like to prosper and have prosperity. Not just accumulated wealth, not just the bigger bottom line, not just the, all of the normal constructs, but how do you do that? How do you create? How do you live where you don't have to sacrifice soul and or your physical material stability? So for any of you that's part of your work in the world too, we're doing that through how we live, how we make our choices. We're like proof positive. We just have to keep doing it. So like for me, when I looked, after 3 years or 2 years, 3 years, however long it was, where I tried that model to just keep, expanding, I was like, this is nuts. This is not that. I'm definitely sacrificing my soul, and I'm not even getting more material security or stability. I'm just working more and paying more people. And I'm not willing to keep doing this. Not my design. And it's been much more simpler for me to stand in my design as a consultant and a teacher and a model maker and a person who brings people together. I just did a power pause for a team of 7 and led them, and through that, and also taught them how to do it in strategic planning. And it was so rewarding for me. And I'm just sharing that with you so that you too can really feel into this for yourself, of what's evolving, what's the essence that's coming with you, and what might be some of, and this is where we're going to go next, some of the shapes and the things that might be changing around it. So this is where, it gets a little marshmallowy, vulnerably for me is, I don't know what's going to happen with this podcast. I don't know if I'll ever write another book again. I don't know that, I don't know. I don't know if I will keep the Feminine Wisdom Way school going. I'm on this 3 month. What I know is I'm taking a 3 month spacer. That is what I know, that I'm creating this 3 months to really listen, to feel and know what's at the center, to allow myself to be guided about where to focus and to listen. And as we're hitting this midpoint right now, I would invite you to consider what's the space that you need. The space that you need to really dial into what is at the center of what you're desiring to create next in your life, and what you're desiring to create next in your vocation, what's calling you. And then giving us the space here to really allow the flow to guide us. And the thing is that we cannot create what's next from the mental plane. It's not possible, because your mind only knows what it's seen before or seen other people do. And it will keep you stuck in duality reality. But there are other forms of intelligence, your body, your heart, tuning into the bigger field, that as you put those into place and just saying to yourself, okay, 3 months, if you're going to do it with us over this season of light, I'm going to allow myself to open to these subtle sensitivities. And that was the guidance I got. It's like, Christine, if you keep trying to figure out, like, should you do a podcast? Should you be on Substack? What should you talk about? Should you talk about this? Should you not talk about that? Like what's there? I'm going like, I was like a ping pong ball, inside of me, in this like internal consternation and this like deep like fear in my heart. I'm like, oh my God, if I stop the podcast, then like that will just kill the wisdom school. And I love the wisdom school, and I want the wisdom school to be able to continue. And also I have these things over here, like the work I'm doing one-on-one with leaders where the company is paying for it, which was a big desire of mine back in 2016. I'm like, look, we, especially women, are always paying for everything out of our own pocket, or not, because we're like, we don't spend the money on ourselves, and or having to find time to do things that are personal growth and or supporting our development, which always supports us as leaders for teams and families. And we have to find the time and we have to find the money. And I really believe that companies and corporations and the business world, that it's meant to fund and help fund the elevation of this planet. That it wants to, at some deep level, it needs to elevate itself. It did its part to get us here, but it can't actually take us the way that it's designed where we're going. And 10% difference is not going to be enough. A lot of times you'll hear in the wisdom traditions, what's missing in the business world and what's missing in the corporate structure overall is soul. And the corporate structure has infiltrated is part of all of the different systems, from politics to healthcare. It's not just in the business sector anymore. And so that structure and that mindset has to evolve in order for us to elevate. But it's not going to do it on its own, because people are afraid. They're afraid of scarcity. We're afraid of lack. We're afraid we won't have what we need. And when we don't have what we need, or we're afraid that we won't going to have what we need, people get more greedy, not more generous. So what we can do for ourselves is first start being generous with yourself and taking the space this season to really tune into your heart and be honest with yourself. What is it that you desire? And not from an airy, non-grounded place, but tune into your heart and tune into the truth of who you are evolving into. And tune into your well-being. Tune into your vocation. And we'll do this over the season of life. We're going to bring in 3 episodes that will take you through this process. So just, keep coming back every week, and the inquiries will be there and we'll take you through this process. I know what's at the center of my sacred life design and my vocation. I just shared with you, I know that mine is to train, educate, and guide the established and emerging leaders for our now and next era. And so that is my center point for everything I'm doing. And if it's not that, I'm not doing it, or I'm going to need to find a different way to do it. And if I want to preserve it, and that's where we're going next. So as you go through this process of really being generous with yourself, and then getting really clear on what do you need to be supported as you go into this next cycle, that's going to be the first 3 episodes of the Stay Light series of let's get really clear at what supports your light to stay bright, what keeps you sustained, what are you going to need in place for that. Partly why I ended up here in Asheville was because I need to be around variety and creativity. And that happens here on the island that I loved living on. There's no variety and no creativity. Lots of beauty, but no creativity and no variety. Thankfully, Asheville has all 3 of those, which are 3 big of my highest values. So knowing what you really value and what really nourishes you, that's where we're going to start out. So these are all things I'm sharing with you to invite you to be like, okay, Christine, what Christine is saying is, let's make this incubator together and lean into it. And then let's see what comes out the other side. And I'll have not more answers, but more clarity. And this is the piece to remember. In the banana world, it's about questions and answers. I have a question, give me an answer. We want definitive. This is not how the new world works. In the new world, it's about inquiry and making an inquiry and allowing yourself to be in the space, to listen, to tune into yourself inside, to feel where's the flow taking you. Because the teaching of wisdom is real clear. Easeful is right, and prosperity happens through simplicity, not complexity. And yes, dear one, you're going to have to let stuff go. I have let go of the path of self-love and the teacher training that I spent years and years and years in developing. And I'm just letting it sit. It's like until something comes by and wants to activate it, it's just gonna stay where it is. And I'm not killing it. I elevated its frequency a couple of years ago. We got parts of it that are self-led now. So the yoga of self-love is self-led, and some of the other teachings so people can access them. And then I'm waiting to see where and what it wants to be. So let's go there next, okay? So everyone good with me? What I'm saying is practice. This is two of the practices coming out of this. One, what do you know and what's still in the mystery? You can write those down and do those, actually journal those out so that you can see them, or do those with another person. Those are also in the Overwhelmed and Over It book when we talk about crazy wisdom in the beginning of the book. It helps you tap in to the deeper wisdom. So what I know and what's in the mystery. Second practice that we're activating here is creating an incubator to play in, to listen in, to not have to go make a decision and a knowing, but to create within. And then I promise you, as always happens, on the other side, you will pop out with more clarity. And then the second part was about really embracing the co-creation then, and getting clear about what's at the center of your life design and your career and vocation design. Start to feel the flow, what's happening, evolving around you. And then attuning inside and using the inquiries that we'll be giving you during the season of light to navigate the now into the next. The inquiries that you'll get over those 9 weeks, plus the little mini power pauses, will support you in that. And so this is where we're going to go, and this is a good example to end here, is how do you, whenever we're going through changes and we're evolving, 3 things are always happening. Something is dying or being destroyed. Other things are being created and are going to be are new. And there's other things in the center is preserve. So you'll hear a lot, there's an archetype called the creator destroyer. And if you create and destroy without preserving, you exhaust yourself. You never really get momentum. It's very distorted masculine. Create, destroy, create, destroy, create, destroy, create, destroy, create, destroy. Binary. You need a triangle. Create, destroy, preserve. And preserve is up on the top for right now, because it's where I want us to focus at. And looking around, so one thing we know, your essence, the essence of who you are, the essence of your vocation, the essence of what is really at the center of your life, it continues with you for forever. We just don't always have the names for it, the words. This is where I come in. This is my superpower, is bringing the language to the invisible. So what I want to explore as this last part for us as we go into the season of light, and we're each dialing into what is at the center of these things, I want to really help shine a light on preserving. And I've done a lot of study on this piece of preservation. When I was doing my deep esoteric deep dive into the feminine, I remember coming to the archetype of the creator destroyer, and on the card, there's like a Kali, there's like the Kali energy is the destroyer, and then there's like the birther, and then this white figure. So it's like red is the birth, black is the destroyer or death, and then preserve is white. And I remember saying to myself, preserve. Oh. Because I was definitely very Phoenix in my nature, create, destroy, always creating. My creatrix is actually, I put her on holiday over the course of our season of light. She is on holiday, not vacation. I'm not really a vacation person. I'm much more European in that way. I'm like, I'm on holiday. I'm on holiday. And so she's on holiday. She's not allowed to create anything new. She's only allowed to do, and I'm going to share with you a couple different ways to think about preserving. So what she's allowed to do are any of these preserving things. And she's allowed to do it from the place of the core principle for how I work. And you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to give it to you all too, so that you can put this down too. It's one of the equations that we use to truly create a world and life in which we prosper. Ready? Do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact. Okay? So one way, well, I'm actually going to give you all the ways. So here's the couple different ways that you can preserve. You can shapeshift. And this could be you, your presence, your essence, or not your essence, but your expression, and or something. So any of these could be about your own presence in the world, and what you would call, like, sometimes people call your brand in the world. But brand really is your essence and how it's expressing. So it's the expression of your essence. If it's a brand that's worthwhile and it's actually genuine versus you trying to mimic and be a parrot of something on the outside, if it's really your design, it's always going to come from essence. So this can also be in a relationship to something that you've created, a project, a business, or that you've been at your organization where you've been working and you've created something. It could also be something that is in your relational field that might be changing. So kind of think about it again through this question of what's evolving within me and around me. So preserving, shapeshift, graft, elevate, maintain for now, or expand. So those are the 5. Shapeshift, graft, elevate, maintain for now, or expand. So let me share these kind of and sort of think about how this might apply for you and this next cycle, or even the cycle that for these next 3 months. Shapeshift. This is where you have something that it exists, and you don't want to kill it or release it, but you want to use it in a different way, in a different space. So I believe that your essence is still in there. Your essence doesn't change, but the outpicturing of what that looks like, the frequency, the tone. It could be like if you and I were like shamans, and we're gonna shapeshift into a jaguar, and your jaguar would look different than my jaguar because it would be your essence and not my essence. Even though we would both look like jaguars, we would have a different feel to that. So with shape-shifting, you're taking something and you're using it differently or bringing it to a new space. So like I was just saying with the self-love, I have shape-shifted the self-love work. Pretty much, not all, but many of the executives and leaders I work with have a self-love, something going on in there. And I may never use the word self-love with them, but whether we're talking about relationship or we're talking about their presence, I'm knowing and moving around my self-love tree in that model, and I'm using it, and I've even changed the way it looks so it's not a pink tree like the first hand illustrated one that I did. I actually created a glyph that was designed by my designer that looks very, it doesn't look just professional. It's just easier for the mind to connect with it. It doesn't look so playful. But I'm shapeshift, so I shapeshifted the model. It looks different, same 10 branches, but different. And then I can use it inside of that work in a way that they can really hear it. So when I'm talking about self-acceptance, and I talk about where that comes from, and that helps them in their own brand, in their own lives, it becomes very empowering. But the essence of it stays the same. So what that might be something in your life that you know is evolving, what in there might want to shapeshift. And what's so great about that is this is where you don't have to just start all over again. Oh my God, this is why some people get scared, because they're like, they think they have to like, they have to go start all over again. No. Or what will happen is people will set down the soul. They'll kind of put their soul on the back burner so they can go make money. And I'm not saying that you don't, I'm saying that's not a good idea, because it'll make you sick at some level. But you do need to shapeshift in order to be able to resonate within different environments. But you keep your soul, you keep your essence. That's how you go into a system, an organization, an ecosystem, and make a tremendous difference without losing yourself, and also receiving the benefits of stability. So that's number one. Number two, grafting. I love grafting, love grafting, love grafting. Grafting is it's a very natural term. It is where you take old rootstock, like a rootstock that has been, it's like grounded in and has deep roots, and you graft on a newer stem or something. Now, for those of you who are actual master gardeners and know how to graft, give me some grace here, because I'm not going to get it exactly right that way. But because I do this in my work all of the time, is I'm taking something new and I'm grafting it onto the old rootstock. And now that thing can grow faster and stronger because it's connected to these other things. And so with the grafting, think of something that you've been growing and tending for some time, and you might want to graft something onto it that's like an extension, an offshoot that can grow onto its own. So for example, for me, you all know that I wrote Overwhelmed and Over It and released it in 2020, but that's based on 15 years of deep research and trying to get underneath the realm, the roots of burnout and overwhelm. And that question that I had back in 2005 is why is it that we have to keep making more money and keep growing year after year, exponentially, versus a tree who grows down and wider and then just keeps making fruit? Why is the business in the corporate world set up? This doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't have to be this way. I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so that tree I've been tending for a long time, and I've been, did lots of different things over the years. Feminine Wisdom Way is part of that. There's lots of different things of exploring a different way. And so I've had a desire and dream to bring the work that's in Overwhelmed and Over It, that gets us out of the burnout matrix. It helps create a different mindset and way of thinking into companies in which they sponsor women within their or leaders within their company to do this 4-month process that I created that comes out of it. And it's a very different, and instead of just being I want to go do this thing that's off here, I'm grafting that on to the original ancient wisdom that's in Overwhelmed and Over It, and also all of the work that I've done over the last 15 years. And then this is a branch that I really want to be able to do so that women can apply it and leaders can apply it directly to their culture to work wiser, not just work smarter, but work wiser and shift the dynamic within the system. So that's me choosing to graft it. It's not some little program that's just hanging out there. And it's taken time and energy and tending, because when you graft something out, it doesn't just start to make fruit right away. So that's the other thing. It's as you're doing these things of preserving into this next cycle, give yourself space so that it's not creating financial pressure on you. If you graft something new onto old rootstock, you have to give it about 3 years before it can kind of live on its own and flourish. So any of these, what's important is you want to look at the material reality of it. Sometimes I've chosen to shapeshift because it actually helps me do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact, and receive more for myself so that I can be here for a longer time with all of you and the generations to come. So I am shape-shifting and bringing all this work in the way that I show up in those realms. I'm still my own essence. I just changed the language, and but the energy is still there. So shape-shifting can be really wonderful and grafting, and you just want to make sure that you give yourself the space and the runway to allow the natural process to happen. And sometimes shape-shifting is faster, and sometimes it's slower. Just kind of depends. So sometimes the easiest thing to do is elevate. So elevate is where you have something that maybe, that existed for a while, and it kind of needs a facelift. It needs to upgrade its frequency. And it's because you're evolving. So you can't keep operating at the level that you were. So this could be like you work for a certain level frequency of a company. Thinking of a woman in one of our leadership councils who works in big tech. And her frequency has elevated to such a degree that her values and their values are not simpatico. And she's looking at like, what's the frequency of company I want to be involved with, an organization. And so that's one way she's elevating in her own career, like finding a higher level company to work with. It might not be as a big monolithic big tech, but might be smaller, or she's still feeling into that, but definitely has more heart in it. It might be something that you've created. Like I was mentioning for me with the Path of Self-Love, the branding and all the things that I had created around all of that. It needed a facelift. It needed to elevate its frequency so it could keep living for the next, 5-10 years. And so I invested in that and spent time doing that last year or 2 years ago, knowing that I was going to be here probably in the third year, ready to really put 80% of my energy into the work with organizations or leaders and leaders to leaders. And the other 20% focused on leadership councils with amazing people such as yourselves. And so like, that's where you're thinking ahead, like what might need a facelift or an elevation. The fourth one is maintain for now. And maintain for now is just like, this is like the grass. You just think of like cutting the grass. What is in your life, your career, be where you live, it could be your body. You just need to take care of it, like maintain it, kind of cut the grass, maybe fertilize it once a year, but you're not growing it into something else. You're not changing its shape. You're just letting it be as it is. This is where some of the space comes from. So for those of you who also have creators or people who like to keep active, you have to kind of let yourself know, like, no, we're just like, chill out. Remember, we need space. And so we're not going to change this. We're not going to make it even a little better. We're just going to keep maintaining it. That's and maintaining is good. It's not like you're neglecting it. So it could be an area of your life where you've given a lot of energy to. You're like, you know what, that's good. I'm just going to maintain that part so I have space over here. Or for those of you who are entrepreneurs or you work inside of a system and there's been things that you've been doing and now it's just time that you can actually just rest back a bit and not have to keep pushing or growing it. It's just allowing it to do what it does. And then the last one is expand. This is an interesting piece because expand, if you're preserving something, sometimes something is in a shape that it kind of reaches its maximum potential in that shape. I think about this in terms of projects, businesses, teams, organizations. It doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you're doing this with you're in an organization. Things have a natural shape. And in order to evolve, if it wants to do more than maintain, it needs to expand. And a lot of the models for expansion are tied to the old powerarchy model that caused a lot of the dis-ease. So there's a wisdom tradition that's applicable to business or growth in any area in which one of the biggest reasons we have the challenges that we have that are caused by our current growth model and economic model is that things grow outside of their natural shape. And then when things are outside of their natural shape, that becomes like cancer, instead of allowing something to be what it is. But sometimes, and so like that's one thing, where expansion, it's like the tree is the tree and it's happy. But sometimes you have things where you can tell it has more potential in it, and or you don't want to kill it, but in order, you want to preserve it because maybe you're moving on to other things. Maybe, you have your energy, like for me, is taking me into where the world is meeting me and I'm meeting it at this time where people are ready for this elevation in how we work and live and succeed and organize things, that my energy is being called over there. But I have this thing called the Feminine Wisdom Way, which is a wisdom school that this podcast has been connected to, that the power pauses that we do, the burnout to balance practice that I do, like all these things that have been built over the last 9 to 10 years. I don't want to just like walk away from that and be like, okay, see y'all later, and so I've been sitting a lot with show me what the new shape could be. And one of the things that I tuned into these 5 possibilities, it's on maintain right now, but is expand. I'm like, if this is going to continue, then I need to expand. And expand doesn't mean put it into the distorted business model that I walked away from in 2017, 18. It means to invite people in, to open it up, to open it up and to invite people in. And that, maybe the do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact is like, that's the piece, like in anything that you're wanting to preserve as you're moving from one thing to the other, whether it's a family system or something you've created within an organization or something that you've created as an entrepreneur, you have to expand to let people in so that that everyone is tending to it, or new people are stepping into different parts and places. And it's hard when you're a founder of something or you're the initiator of something because, well, no one will do it just like you, which is kind of the point. Because usually if something needs to expand, then it needs new energy in it. And this also takes time. There's a consciousness to it, right? If you're going to do this inside of your family system or relationships or where you live or work or your projects or whatever it might be, is like giving it space to allow. I always say like you always date before you get married, right? So it's really allowing people to come in and allowing the synchronicities. And this is what I've found is I chose to put Feminine Wisdom Way and all the things that have been created on maintain. Kind of, we're just doing what we're doing and make that enough, which is more than enough. Allow it to do that. And then opening up the doors, like who wants to play in here and whose part of design is this? And then noticing the synchronicities and how it shows up so that I can expand and go where I'm being called without pulling my essence out of all these things. Like I'm not ever just going to be like, okay, bye, see y'all, nice to know you. It's like, I will play my part in it. And I love this thing that I've been part of co-creating. I love being here with all of you and being able to talk openly about the mystical and the material. I love that you're out there in the world doing you and doing your part and choosing to live from harmonic defiance and making, influencing things in so many ways. I love being with people such as yourselves where I can talk about soul and financial material security and stability. And you'll be like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you have both? Like, why do you need to have either or? Like, we don't, right? Like, you all get that. And we're all in our own places and spaces. But, I love being able to just speak freely here and not have to shift my language. But really just, I turn the podcast mic on here and I sit with you and I feel like these are transmissions. And I know what's at the center of where I want to take us. And I know the points I want to hit. I never sure exactly what's going to come out. And I'm feeling a lot less nervous than I was when I started. So I want to just say thank you for being here, you all. We're getting ready to wrap up here. But I want to thank you all for that. And I knew that I could let you all in And, also letting you know that, to share the subtleties here of like, how do I preserve something I love? And also what's needed, like, what is it? I'm curious about that. That's something I'll be sensing into, like what's actually needed for those that are out there reimagining and redesigning the world. I feel like Feminine Power Time has always kept the beat for us. And I am very much still committed to keeping the beat. And that means working with the cycles and having a space to tune in. And I just need more, I need to expand that. So one of the ways that's going to show up with Feminine Power Time is this summer I'm in my space and also doing the pilot for the Rise Women's Leadership cohort and deepening with the other work I'm doing with leaders within organizations and loving so much. That's how I know, it's just, I'm loving it so much. And listening deeply to the potential of a leadership council coming up this fall. So I'm still leaning into that and listening into what that's going to look like. Is that I'm also listening for what this, podcasting has changed. And it's there's more podcasts and more people doing it. And it's always interesting when you're a pioneer in a space. And then, when it's been infiltrated, like, do you stay? Do you go? And because I've been doing the podcast, I haven't had as much space and time to spend on providing education through YouTube. And also I'm really considering, like, what is my relationship to being a quote unquote public figure? As many of you know, I'm not really into the kind of see me part. It's just, at least work, playing on some of the social media channels it drains my energy. It doesn't sustain it. So I'm feeling into, what's needed where, when, and I don't have all the answers. But I know what I know. And I know that I love what I've created here with all of you. And I know that we have more work to do together. And let's see what that looks like. So in the meantime, I am bringing somebody in to help tend Feminine Power Time. You will meet her next week. She's going to be co-hosting this Stay Light Season of Light series 8.5, season 8.5 with me. Her name is Jennifer Alexander. And Jennifer is a beautiful soul who also, funny enough, grew up in Chicago, or she grew up in the Midwest and has her MBA from a business school in Chicago, different one, deeply studied in the feminine and in the yogic world, yogic philosophy and practice. And she's just a beautiful soul, a mother of 2 little girls who she's raising to be, really rooted in the ancient feminine wisdom and the earth wisdom. And also is an entrepreneur who's run her own company for the last 10 years. So I'm bringing her in she's also been she's been a podcast listener since, I don't know, maybe 2020. She'll let us know. So I'm bringing her in to help curate and co-host the series. So she'll be introducing each of the sessions and also helping distill it into an inquiry for each of us. And we're doing some slight editing on the podcasts that will be running, which are podcasts that have run before, but we're curating them for this season of Light because it turns out we've been listening to them. We're like, oh, this is so relevant. This is so relevant. This is what we need right now. So I'm excited for you to meet her. And so between her and Melissa, who is my assistant, and Melissa's we're bringing on another person to help with some of the social posting and some of the postings in other places to help people be able to share. So expanding in that way and doing all that in a way that actually is do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact. So I had to have patience. So it's like, I'm not going to go out and spend, thousands of dollars to have that happen. But one thing I notice in the feminine is that as we're shifting and elevating, other people are ready to elevate too. So what you'll notice both behind the scenes and on the scene is that what's happening in everything that I'm doing is that as I'm elevating and evolving, people will be elevating and evolving to support this work in this community, whether and however it is you participate in it. So that is where we're at. Okay, my loves, we're at 1:08 on the timestamp here, and it's 1:08 p.m. as I'm taping it, which is a very significant number, one of my favorite numbers on the planet. So I'm going to end here with us all and just remind you, Season of Light starts next week, and Jennifer and I will be kicking it off with a prelude into the season, which is all about what is the feminine and how can it help guide and support us now and going forward. So I think you'll really love that conversation, and it'll give us a little bit more frame. And that'll be dropping right around the new moon. And then we'll go into the season. And then, for those of you that would like to hang out live, we do have, as usual, the mid-year power pause. So do come to that, flowpowerpause.com. I'll be doing that right along with you. And you'll also notice some new people that they're not really new, they've been around, but expanding the people who will be holding space and creating space. It's super creative adventure. So flowpowerpause.com for anyone that wants to take a mid-year power pause and really get focused on what it is and where you want to put your energy at this next half of the year will be great. And then, I will have more for you when I stop in with the power pause. I'll do a short power pause episode for us in June and again at the beginning of August. So do stay tuned in. Make sure that you are subscribed on your podcast app. And also, if you're not a member of the Feminine Wisdom Cafe, things are always posted up there. So you can go to femininewisdomcafe.com. It's free. It's on Muddy Networks. And that's a great way to stay connected as well. And then lastly, my only request is share this podcast with another person and invite them to be part of a season of light with you and exploring for yourselves what is evolving within you and around you. And then each week you'll get an inquiry that you can all come around, and it'll be a great way to create connection with those people in your life that you want to create a deeper connection with, and it will all elevate together. All right. Thanks for sharing the podcast. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for witnessing me in my evolution. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Okay. Much love.